Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about one of the absolute OGs of software development, the waterfall model. If you've ever wondered how people managed to build complex software before all the modern, flexible methods came along, well, this is it. This was the original blueprint for taming the chaos.
So here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with what the waterfall model actually is, then we'll walk through its very specific, rigid steps. We'll look at where it's actually super useful and where it totally fails. Then we'll touch on a different approach, agile, and wrap it all up by figuring out how you choose the right process for your project.
So let's just start with the fundamental problem this was all trying to solve. I mean, how do you build something incredibly complex, like a huge piece of software, without it all descending into utter chaos? You wouldn't build a skyscraper without a detailed blueprint and a step-by-step plan, right? It'd be a disaster. That's exactly the kind of thinking that led to structured processes in the first place.
All right, section 1. What exactly is the waterfall model? Well, before we can even define that, we need to understand what a software process model is. At its core, it's just a roadmap, a predictable path to get you from a raw idea to a finished working product.
You can think of it like a recipe. It's a formal plan that lays out all the ingredients and all the steps you need to follow. It covers everything from defining what the system is supposed to do to designing it, building it, and even maintaining it for years to come. It's all about making sure everyone is on the same page and following the same playbook. Now pay really close attention to that phrase, plan-driven. That is the absolute soul of the waterfall model. It means everything, and I mean everything, is planned out right at the start. You create a master plan, and the rest of the project is just executing that plan. It's methodical, it's deliberate, and it is highly structured. So how does this actually work in practice? Let's break down the steps that give this model its name. And the name waterfall is perfect, really, because the process flows in only one direction, straight down. Each phase flows into the next, and there's no going back up.
Okay, so first up, you gather all the requirements. You figure out every single thing the customer needs, down to the last detail. And only when that phase is totally done and signed off do you move on to the design phase. Once the blueprint is complete, then you start the coding. After that, you put all the pieces together and test the whole thing. And finally, it goes live. Each step is a distinct stage that pours into the next.
And this quote right here, this is the golden rule. You don't get to swim back upstream. Once the requirements phase is signed off, it is basically set in stone. This rigidity is the model's most defining characteristic, and you'll see how it's both its greatest strength and its most fatal flaw. So, hearing all of that, you're probably thinking, man, that sounds incredibly inflexible. Why would anyone ever use this? And that is a totally fair question. But it turns out, in some very specific situations, that kind of strict, predictable structure is exactly what you need. So let's look at where the waterfall model actually shines. This model is at its best on massive, and I mean massive projects, where the requirements are crystal clear and are not going to change. Think about the software for a space shuttle or for a nuclear power plant. The requirements for those systems cannot change mid-project. For projects like that, the rigid plan is a feature, not a bug. It helps coordinate these huge, distributed teams because everyone knows exactly what they need to build from day one. But let's be honest, most software projects aren't for space shuttles. For most of us, the ground is constantly shifting under our feet. So now we have to flip the coin and talk about why this exact inflexibility can be a total disaster. Here's the tough reality from most business software. Customer needs change, the market changes, a new competitor pops up, and the waterfall model is just terrible at handling change. What's worse is that you don't get a working version of the product until the very end of the process, so the customer can't give you any real feedback until pretty much all the work has already been done. And this is where things get really expensive. Finding a mistake in the requirements during the testing phase, which is one of the last steps, is exponentially more expensive to fix than if you'd caught it on day one. We're not talking twice as expensive. Some studies show it can cost over 60 times more. Why? Because you might have to go back and redo months of design and code. It can completely torpedo your budget and your deadline. And this really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The one that waterfall just can't answer very well. In a fast-moving business world, this isn't just a possibility, it's practically a guarantee. And this exact problem is what created the pressure for a whole new way of thinking about software. And that new way of thinking was agile.
Agile wasn't invented in a vacuum, it was a direct reaction to the stiffness of plan-driven models like Waterfall. The point wasn't to get rid of planning entirely, but to build a process that could adapt and iterate on the plan as you go.
This chart just perfectly illustrates the philosophical shift. Instead of these big, separate stages, Agile kind of mushes them all together. You do a little bit of design, a little bit of coding, and a little bit of testing, all in one short cycle. So instead of one massive delivery at the very end, you get a series of small, frequent updates that you can actually use.
And the benefits here line up perfectly to fix Waterfall's biggest weaknesses. Because you're only building in small chunks, changing direction is way cheaper. The customer gets to see and play with working software really early, so their feedback is constant and useful. It just allows the team to adapt and make sure that what they build in the end is what the customer actually needs.
So, is Waterfall dead? Should we all just be doing Agile now? Well, not so fast. The big takeaway here isn't that one is good and one is bad. It's that they are different tools for very different jobs. The real skill is knowing which tool to pull out of the toolbox.
And this table is basically your cheat sheet for making that call. You can see the pattern, right? If your requirements are locked down tight for a huge, safety-critical system, Waterfall stability is your best friend. But if you're building a web app where you know things are going to change and you need constant feedback, Agile's flexibility is going to be a much, much better fit.
At the end of the day, this choice is not just a technical detail. It's a massive strategic decision. If you pick the wrong model for your project, for your team, and for your customer, you could be setting yourself up for failure before a single line of code ever gets written.
So, I'll just leave you with this final thought. In a world that prizes speed and adaptability above all else, is there still a place for a rigid, methodical plan? And as we've seen, the answer is a definite yes. But you have to be incredibly smart about when and where you use it. Thanks for watching.